Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about potential for severe weather to increase across portions of the southern and potentially central United States as well. So here we are, we're looking at the SBC graphics site, and let's go to the NWS region, and we're going to click on the NWS southern region. So we currently have a marginal risk. This is for tomorrow. This might get upgraded to slight locally somewhere. We have it stretching into eastern Texas, northwest Louisiana, maybe a part of the southeast corner of Oklahoma there, and into central Arkansas. The primary threats are going to be damaging wind and hail, I think, from what the SPC has had out. Yep, damaging wind and large hail are going to be the primary threats. As we look at the HRRR here, kind of put it in motion, we're expecting some warm air advection showers to kind of pull up, and then we're expecting widespread thunderstorms to start firing off in the or late afternoon into the early evening across portions of Texas and Louisiana. These will push up to the northeast and bring a threat for severe weather. If we take a look at some soundings here in eastern Texas, not really too supportive for tornadoes, I would say. These photographs can sometimes be a little bit tricky though and give us a tornado, but looks like our surface ones are kind of weak. The thermodynamic profile, though, is pretty solid. You have not a huge area of cape, but it's spread out very well and distributed well, so that will kind of come in handy. Your lapse rates are very solid because of that, into the 6 to 7 range as well. As you can see here, we can see these stronger storms start to really fire up as we get into the later evening hours. I took another sounding there in eastern Texas, and I'll kind of go more into this sounding here. So up here is the photograph. This is where your wind shear is. As you can see here, wind shear in the 0 to 1 kilometer is about, I think, 10 knots or so. 10 to, or no, it's 30 knots, sorry. It's 30 knots, you can see it up here. And the wind shear is basically the wind energy in the atmosphere, which is a key ingredient needed for tornadoes and damaging wind and large hail in some instances too. Looking at the thermodynamic profile, which is shown right here, you want to have the cape. The cape is between the red and the white dotted lines right here. So you can see between the red and the white dotted lines, there's a pretty solid area here of cape, and we usually like to look at the mixed layer parcel in this kind of community here. We like looking at the mixed layer parcel more than anything, especially in this situation when your surface is a little bit has a little bit of an inversion, which you can see here by the red and green going up a little bit. This could disrupt tornadogenesis if a storm is not sustained. 3 Cape is not terrible considering the situation, so we might get a 5% tornado risk eventually across Texas and into Louisiana over the next couple of days. I think this definitely goes upscale, so we'll probably get a wind risk as well. Looking into kind of western Louisiana at the end of the period, looks like some couple stronger storms start to pop off. Wind and hail would be the main threats with those, probably more wind oriented. Alright, so looking into the global models now, we can see the GFS here kind of shows that we're going to have another system coming in later this week, and we can see it forming off the Pacific coast right in here. You can see it forming off in the Pacific coast there. And actually, we're going to use Epic Pen, so give me a second here. And you can see it forming off in the Pacific coast. Oh, my bad. I jumped way too far with this. And this system, as it forms, it gains strength across portions of the Pacific Northwest, giving them abundance of snow and rain over there, which is going to really help with the drought conditions that are happening. And we can see this system really starts firing up Monday. And before I go on, there is a 15% severe risk on Monday across portions of East Texas, a lot of Arkansas, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, a lot of Kentucky, Tennessee, northwest Alabama, and into Mississippi. This is a very large 15% risk. I was expecting a little bit of a smaller one, if I'm going to be completely honest, but it's here, so yeah, I feel like the most area certainty confidence is a little bit further south, but the SBC had other ideas, which is okay. They're the experts. I'm just here kind of to kind of relay the information and kind of give my opinions on some of the models. But as we can see here, Monday, we can see we have a low pressure system that's starting to bomb out here in portions of Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. Now, this low pressure place is going to be key for several reasons. One for potential for cold to core severe weather. There's potential for a cold to core severe weather event. Generally, somewhere in here is where I can see that potential. It's also going to be key for the Ohio Valley risk, which the SPC extended their 15% out, which is going to be generally in here. The Ohio Valley risk is characterized by an embedded shortwave, which I'll show you in a second. Low pressure placement is not really too key for, I would say, this general area over here, as I'm going to say severe weather's probably in the cards at this point for Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, or Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, into Alabama, maybe parts of Tennessee and Arkansas. I think severe weather is probably likely there. So the low pressure placement's more of a thing for the other risks that I mentioned. As we can see here, very strong thunderstorms move across portions of kind of Illinois, Indiana, down further southward there into the Gulf Coast. And as we can see here, another severe risk is going to build Thursday. Now, this risk is not expected to be as significant, but I still think isolated to scattered severe storms are going to be possible, probably in here. As this low pressure kind of dies off, you'll still have decent flow. Now, let's look at 500 millibar. Now, looking into 500 millibar, we can see the system right here. This is the system that's going to bring some severe weather potential across portions of the Arklatex tomorrow, and we can see there is potential for discrete supercells because these vectors are not, they're a little bit more zonal. They're not super meridional, but they're definitely not super zonal either. Now, as we can see here, we get another little system over here around New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve. Maybe some stronger storms with this system. We'll have to see. It looked like that was going to be a big system initially, but now it's slowed down a little bit. Looking further into this here, we can see here's our big trough. Here's our big player starting to really eject across the region here. This is Sunday, and we can see a very strong trough moving into the Four Corners region. As we can see, there's this thing moves up and picks speed, and we can see here a very strong flow starts to result off this low pressure system that's upper level low pressure system that's developing out there in Colorado. We can see here, looks like the more zonal flow is going to result on more of this general area of the system here, which more zonal flow is usually a lot better for discrete supercell development, which is something that enhances tornado potential a lot more, and we'll talk about that later. But as we can see here, an embedded shortwave starts to develop in kind of Missouri and Illinois out ahead of this what looks to be a line of storms that starts to form. This is going to probably enhance the risk some for that area as well. Now, as we can see here, this trough starts to really pick up speed and strengthen as we get further to the east, and we can see here again, looks like severe potential is possible on Thursday again in the Gulf Coast region here, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Now let's look into the moisture of these models now. And here we go. We can look at the moisture by using dew points. Now, dew points are going to be a huge key because the GFS is more progressive with this system, which means you're going to get more dew point pull further to the north. Here's that system on Thursday, and then we can see here we have moisture that kind of sticks around the Gulf, maybe a severe weather event in the southeast on Saturday. If we take a look at forecast soundings here, though, okay, so they showcase a little bit of potential for some severe weather. We have a solid area of Cape distributed pretty decently. It's a little bit more skinny in the upper levels between 7 and 11 kilometers. Three Cape is not terrible, but there's a little bit of a warm layer that kind of moves in. Excuse me, as I'm about to sneeze. As we can see here, this photograph's not terrible, but it's gonna mainly support more wind and hail potential. Now we can see here the dew points start to get pulled up again, and we can see that system really starts to pull them up into Kansas and Missouri, Nebraska area. So here's the low pressure system. The cold core severe weather event is going to be in yellow right here. Is where the cold core event would be. Pink is where that Ohio Valley risk may materialize. The SPC hold a 15% risk out for it. And then blue is, I think, where the area of most certainty is for severe potential right now, which is probably in here. So there's lots of different targets with this system, and if you're a storm chaser, you probably want to wait a couple days to really decide where you want to go, because right now it's kind of uncertain. Let's first kind of take a look at this Nebraska risk here on the GFS, and kind of look at it. So up here in Nebraska, we can have Nebraska, Kansas, we have this low pressure system that's going to pull moisture, become very strong. And we can see here, dew points of 56 get up into Kansas there. Soundings here, we have a very large photograph with very strong upper level wind shear. So storm motions are going to be on the order of like 50 knots, which is 60 miles per hour. So very fast storm motions. Your cape is very skinny, not really distributed that well either, but this is a long range model, so this could change. They don't handle cold core as well as some of the shorter range models, so we'll kind of wait and see on that. And if we look at the surface-based cape and photograph map, we can see decent combo of that here. As we get towards 0Z, if we take a look at soundings that are across kind of Nebraska here, a little box sounding here, you can see that the cape is distributed a bit better. Still not great, but it's all throughout the profile now, which means you're going to have higher 3 cape and everything. Now, as we kind of move down to the Ohio Valley risk, and you can actually see the other sector too. Very large photographs are going to be a thing throughout this. We can see here, looking into forecast soundings, this is going to support tornadoes and damaging wind gusts. Now, the thing about it is that usually you want more perpendicular vectors for QLCS tornado events, which this will likely be a QLCS tornado event. Here, they're not as perpendicular. They're a lot better as you get up toward Illinois and Missouri, but they're still not great in this area. But this doesn't mean you can't get severe weather. You probably still will. It's just a limiting factor and something to discuss. And your 850 millibar flow doesn't really change aside from Missouri. It's a little bit more backed up there because of your low pressure system up in Kansas. Now let's look into the European model. It's a little bit different from the GFS. It's a lot more slower, which means the Ohio Valley risk would go away. And as we can see here, 18Z, we have the low pressure system way out here in Texas and Oklahoma, and it's also a little bit weaker. So we get toward 21Z, it strengthens up into Kansas. So we can see here, this would be a lot more favorable for the cold core severe weather event, but the thing is, this low pressure is way further south, which means the Ohio Valley risk here would be nothing to zero unless it's overnight. And as we can see here, the European is a lot more favorable for that cold core risk. As we can see, soundings are very supportive with very enlarged photographs, and they keep being distributed pretty good. Lots of warm sector activity ongoing across portions of Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, as well into Tennessee and Kentucky. A snowstorm on the backside of the system. I'm not going to be talking about the snowstorm in this video. I'm in a bit of a time crunch. But as we can see here, this low pressure quickly moves to the northward, which could surge moisture up to the Ohio Valley. As we get towards 6 Zulu time, we can see the European does actually now have the warm sector in about the same position the GFS did, but it's 6 hours later, so your thermodynamic profiles will probably not be as good. As we look at the hodograph and Cape map, it is very apparent. We can see, though, that Tennessee and Kentucky, you still have a risk. Alabama and Mississippi, you guys still have a risk for severe weather at this point, but the Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and maybe Kentucky risk is not as good. As we can see here again, Mississippi looks very good on the euro. If we take a box sounding across Mississippi and kind of observe it, we can see a very enlarged hodograph, which is featured here. It looks like your flow actually changes from 1 to 6 kilometer, which would probably induce discrete supercell development if on a prefrontal boundary, which confluence bands are probably going to be likely in this situation. We can see here as we get toward 21Z, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana really start to become your hotspot target on the euro. Very okay soundings here. Nothing too kind of crazy to go about except for the hodograph, which is pretty solid, but you're lacking upper level wind shear, which is a key ingredient needed for severe weather. It helps kind of vent everything out. If storms are probably going to be very HP down here as well if the venting is not available, which HP stands for high precipitation. As we briefly look into the ensembles, we can see, let's go to the GEFS ensemble run. We can see the GEFS ensemble shows a pretty solid wave of activity here. We're starting to get wind shear a little bit better. It's agreeing on more zonal flow though across kind of this general area which I talked about earlier, which could spark an embedded shortwave. We want if you want severe weather in the Ohio Valley, you want more of a faster system though, not like the Euro. If the Euro solution happens, the severe weather and the Ohio Valley goes down, but the cold core risk is a lot higher across portions of Kansas and Oklahoma. I think the cold core risk either way could be something. Looking at 500 millibar, there are subtle differences between the European and GFS. The European looks like it goes more positive tilted, while the GFS goes more negative tilted, it looks like. Or maybe I got that backwards. I don't know. My bad if I did get it backwards. Looking at 850 millibars here, we can see confidence on a very strong lower level jet is pretty high. 30 to 40 knots across the board. GEFS actually shows nearly 50 knots of low level jet support. Now looking at the Cape above 500 with both of the models here. This one I guess didn't load. Cape above 500 is pretty strong, especially across Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And again, the same story here. Pretty solid as well in the cold core risk. And as we get toward 18Z, again, looks like the GEFS is a little bit more north and more aggressive, which is something to kind of keep an eye on too. Maybe the Euro crashes the cold front more, which is another possibility. But that will do it for this one. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.